Good evening to one and all. The School of Ancient Wisdom is happy to welcome all of you to yet another learning session this evening. We thank you for your participation and welcome all of you in the ongoing webinar series. As always, we would like to begin with our school prayer. I would request all of you to please join me as I have pasted the school prayer in the chat box for your reference. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, working all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee, he is also one with every other. I request, please kindly mute yourself. So
I'm very sorry for that.
So today we have with us Shri Veeraraghavacharya learned Sanatana Dharma directly through Paramparik Acharya through the traditional system of Kalakshepa, have participated in Vyakartha Sadhas conducted by prominent Sri Vaishnava Acharyas on Vedanta, also hold a degree in Nyaya philosophy. On the Laukika front, have completed B in electronics and PGP in data science. Sri Veeraraghavacharya.
Bastard.
Sorry. We thank you very much for your valuable time and truly appreciate it. We now hand over this forum to Sri Veeraraghavacharya ji to engage us for the next 1 hour and request him to share his knowledge and insights with us. Thank you.
Namaste. Before beginning, I have a humble request. Kindly remove this John Pork person. The use of apashabdas is very inappropriate in a place where we are discussing philosophy. And as per the vidhi, I will be forced to go and take bath if I hear such words. It is so. It is a very humble request from my side. Please don't.
Yeah, removed.
Thank you. Let me try sharing the screen. Just give me a second. Where is the option to share?
Below there's an option called share screen.
Found it. Here. Slideshow. Play from. Is the screen visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, namaste to my name was introduced as Veeraraghavacharya, but we have a tradition as per which Vaishnavas address themselves only as Dasa, Dasanudasa, and so on. What is this? What is this in the screen?
That is a sketch, I think, that is done by you. That
no,
is annotated.
It is okay, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Let it be. Yeah, sorry. So it is the fundamental teaching of Vishishtadvaita revolves around bhakti. It is a person, Ruth iPhone. That person is drawing on the screen. All right. Anyway, so it is the fundamental teaching of Vishishtadvaita that we look at ourselves as dasas. When we say dasa, it means that we are having a feeling of servitude, not just towards Bhagavan, but also towards Bhagavatas. Those people who are prominent or not necessarily prominent, but very devout followers of Bhagavan, they are to be treated as our masters, and to them, in whichever way possible, we
Excuse me.
Respects.
Can everyone turn on their camera so we don't know it's their Zoom bombing, you know?
Sorry.
I think we're being Zoom bombed. Can everybody turn on the camera? Or continue with the presentation.
Okay. So I would like to begin with a prayer to my Venerable Acharya, Shastra Sahiti Vallabha, Rashtrapati Sammanita, Shri Bhashya Simhasanadhipati, Shri Uve Karunakararya Mahadeshika Swami, Shrivatsavanša Kalashodadhi Kaustubhasya, Shrivasaraghava Guros Tanayam Tatascha, Vidya Avapya Vibudhottamatam Dadhanam, Kurve Sadahradi Gurum Karunakarakyam. We get knowledge only through our gurus and acharyas. Shiva tells Parvati, Yesham Guru Kripa Nasti, Adhogachanti Parvati. In that sense, when we do not have the compassion of gurus, we will only fall down, as in, we will fall more and more into, we will fall more and more down. Instead of having a beautiful drawing that
Nigger, 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 nigger,
end up
nigger, nigger, nigger,
scribbling
nigger,
and
nigger,
scribbling in this
nigger.
manner. So Yesham Guru Kripa Nasti Adhogachanti Parvati. Thank you for
Bloody
giving a little
bastard.
example of that. So has the person been removed yet?
Yeah, he has been removed.
Bloody bastard.
Are you sure?
Please remove the person named Pascal.
Shut up.
Yes, it says the name is Pascal, the person who has drawn these. Not sure where people are coming from. But anyway, let us continue. If we keep waiting for each person to get removed, then all the time will get wasted. I'm sorry for that. So there is this Guru Parampara Shloka that we recite. Because if we are receiving knowledge from a guru, that guru would have received it from another guru, and so on it would have gone. As we say, our dharma is Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means eternal. So if something is eternal, it can originate only from Bhagavan. Hence, the Guru Parampara, every authentic Guru Parampara would start with Bhagavan himself. In the case of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, it starts with Sriman Narayana, who is addressed as Lakshmi Natha here. So we have Lakshmi Natha Samarambham, Natha Yamuna Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru Paramparam. We are paying respects to Bhagavan and then Natha Muni, Yamuna Acharya, and then finally up to our current Acharya. That is what we are doing here. Then there is a specific prayer to Bhagavad Ramanuja, because he was the foremost proponent of Vishishtadvaita in Kali Yuga. Yo nityam achyuta padambuja yugma rukma vyamohatasta ditarani trinaya mene asmadguror bhagavatosya dayaika sindho Ramanujasya charanau sharanam prapadye. And the teachings of Bhagavad Ramanuja, especially Sri Bhashya and the commentary on the Sri Bhashya, which is called Shruta Prakashika, if they are all still available to us today and have further been clarified to us, it is because of an Acharya called Vedanta Deshika. Hence we pay respects to him also. Shriman Venkatanatharya Kavitarkika Kesari Vedanta Acharya Varyo me Sannidhattam Sadahradi. Now to give a very short overview of what the course is going to be, we would have an introduction to Vishishtadvaita philosophy. followed by the core teachings of the philosophy itself. We would cover the lives of some prominent Sri Vaishnava saints like Bhagavad Ramanuja, and then move on to the in-depth teachings of Vishishtadvaita. As for today's agenda, we are going to look at what Vishishtadvaita means as a word and as a concept. Then we would look at the origin of Vishishtadvaita. We would look at it in the Vedas, in Itihasas and Puranas, and of course, we would look at the Acharya Parampara that has transmitted this knowledge. And then we would look at some ancient followers of Vishishtadvaita, as is explained by the very scriptures. We would look at all of these today. So, what is Vishishtadvaita? This word Vishishtadvaita is a compound. It should not be understood as Vishishtadvaita. The sandhi here is Vishishtadvaita. When you combine the two, it becomes Vishishtadvaita. So we have two parts here. One is Vishishta and one is Advaita. Advaita, many people call it as the philosophy of monism. While it is technically correct, the word actually means non-duality. Advaita, non-duality. Implying, of course, that there is only one entity and therefore we get the word monism from it. With Vishishta added to the word, it becomes qualified monism, a special case of non-duality. But for us to understand what a special case of non-duality means, we would have to first understand the philosophy of non-duality itself. So what does the philosophy say? In very short words, if I have to say, what kind of non-duality is it talking about? Any existing entity. We might look at infinite entities. I might look at people around me, objects around me, right? Living beings, non-living beings. There is space, time, the dimensions are there. But in reality, what is called as Paramartha by Adi Shankaracharya, as per Advaita philosophy that is propounded by him, there is only one absolute entity that is addressed as Brahman, Atma, and so on. Hence, the word Advaita was taught to people to understand this concept. Now, how do we understand this specific non-duality? In this topic, Bhagavad Ramanuja and his Purvacharyas, and of course successors, believed that there is an additional element that needs to be considered here, that it is not just an attributeless Brahman, but a Brahman that has the quality of being associated with everything that is considered as Vyavahara in Advaita. What is the word Vyavahara? We will discuss later. Most of you might already be aware. But anyway, so this is the reason why the word Vishishtadvaita is used. Of course, there are other reasons. Like when you have a different philosophy, you need a different name. But why Vishishtadvaita? Why not Vishishtadvaita? What is the difference? Why can't you call it as Vishishtadvaita? Why should you call it as Vishishtadvaita? Does it mean that Vishishtadvaita is just Advaita in a different way? Is it closer to Advaita than Dvaita? All such questions could arise. For this, we need to understand that where Dvaita talks about Bheda, that is the difference in beings, and Advaita talks about Abheda, that is non-difference between different beings, Vishishtadvaita as a concept talks about where there is Bheda and where there is Abheda. For this, it takes a number of sources. One is in the Veda, the most prominent among the scriptures, the eternal Vedas. In the Vedas, we may derive the philosophical parts that talk about the Atman into three. One is Bheda Shruti, one is Abheda Shruti, and one is Ghataka Shruti. What are these three? Shruti means Veda. Bheda Shruti is where the Veda appears to say that the individual Atma is different from the Supreme Atma. This is pointed out by Vedavyasa again in his Brahma Sutras, where he says, Adhikam tu Bheda Nirdeshat. Abheda Shruti is where the Veda appears to say the exact opposite. It appears to say that the individual Atma is the same as the Supreme Atma. What you have in Abheda Shruti is what is called as Mahavakya in the Advaita school. The Mahavakyas of Advaita are all part of Abheda Shruti. There is a third part where it is neither talking about equality nor talking about the difference, but about the relationship. For example, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we see that it is talking about a specific kind of relationship, yasya atma shariram ityadaya. So, where it talks about a relationship between the individual Atma and the Supreme Atma, it is called Ghataka Shruti. As this Ghataka Shruti has been given a lot of importance in order to reconcile the apparent contradiction within the Veda. Remember, I am saying apparent contradiction because Veda cannot contradict itself. It does not contradict itself. Everybody believes that Veda does not contradict itself. But if Veda does not contradict itself, then how do we understand apparently opposing statements? Hence, Shankara Bhagavad Pada said, let us give priority to Abheda Shruti. Madhvacharya said, let us give priority to Bheda Shruti and understand the other parts according to it. Likewise, Bhagavad Ramanuja gave a focus on Ghataka Shruti, which talks about the relationship. This exact relationship also we will see later. Then there is Ramayana, for instance, where Kashyapa Maharshi, when praying to Vishnu, he says, Sharire tava pashyami jagat sarvam idam prabho. Sharire tava pashyami. I see in your sharira, jagat sarvam idam prabho. Hey Prabho, O Lord, I see jagat sarvam, the entire universe in your sharira. This statement of Kashyapa Maharshi is taken as an important pramana as it establishes Vishishtadvaita. Likewise, we have a number of examples within Mahabharata. We have in Puranas, especially the Satvika Puranas, and then we have in the Vaishnava Agamas also. In both Pancharatra and in Vaikhanasa, we have the basis for Vishishtadvaita. So I shouldn't technically say that Vishishtadvaita originated in Ramayana, Mahabharata or anything, because the Vedas are predating all of these. But it is to be understood that the origin of Vishishtadvaita, just like the other two prominent schools, is itself as old as the Vedic times. Then comes the Guru Parampara. Here, there is something to note. The Veda Parampara has to compulsorily include Vedavyasa. Why? Because Vedavyasa is responsible for compiling the Vedas and bringing them to the form in which we have today, so that we can understand. Out of great compassion, when Vishnu came as Vedavyasa, he compiled the Vedas and made it easier for the future generations to understand. So there was a parampara coming in this way, doing Veda Dhyana, understanding Veda, Vedanta, and so on. In this parampara, a person called Natha Muni appeared. This Natha Muni was a great saint who was interested in certain ancient Tamil verses that appeared to teach the same Vedantic teachings as the Sanskrit scriptures. He performed tapasya towards Shadhakopa Muni, who descended and gave him the knowledge of the Tamil verses, 4,000 verses that are collectively called Divya Prabandham, composed by the Alvar saints of Sri Vaishnavism in ancient times. These 4,000 verses in Tamil repeat the same thing that has already been presented in Sanskrit. So there is this parampara. So when I say Lakshmi Natha Samarambham, Natha Yamuna Madhyamam, Natha Muni and Yamunacharya, both of them were part of both the paramparas. They had done Vedadhyayana, Sanskrit scriptures they had learned. Likewise, these Tamil verses were also learned by them. And therefore, Asmadacharya Paryantam Mande Guru Paramparam, when a Sri Vaishnava says it, it is to be understood that the Guru Parampara is knowledgeable in both of these scriptures. Now, this particular verse, Lakshmi Natha Samarambha, was composed by a saint called Kuresha. Kuratalvan, we call him in Tamil. Kuresha was a disciple of Bhagavad Ramanuja. And in this specific format, he wanted to compose where the attributes of the different acharyas is not mentioned, but the parampara is quickly mentioned in a very simple meter that ensures that even the common man can understand it. That is why we see this specific format of the shloka used even in other sampradayas, like in Advaita in South India, we hear them say Sadashiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam. In North India, we hear them say Narayana Samarambham, Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam. All of these are used because it is an easy way to remember the Guru Parampara. And praying to the Guru Parampara is extremely divine. That is why there is so much stress on this. But there is one thing about Kuresha Shloka that is very important. Now I said that in North India, if you go to the Shankaracharya, they would say Narayana Samarambham. For them, whether they say Narayana Samarambham or Sadashiva Samarambham, it would not make much of a difference. But for Sri Vaishnava, specifically saying Lakshmi Natha Samarambham is more important. Of course, we accept Narayana Samarambham, but addressing Bhagavan as Lakshmi Natha is very important. Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, that Shri is not just a pronoun, it is literally the Shri Devi. Hence, that Lakshmi Natha, Sriman Narayana, as it is said by the scriptures, Vaikunthe tu pare loke Shriya Sardham Jagatpatihi. In that manner, and as it is said in Vishnu Purana by Parashara Maharshi, that Vishnu is never separated from Lakshmi. In that sense, as that Vishnu who is always present along with Lakshmi Devi, who is prayed to along with his association to Lakshmi Devi as Lakshmi Natha, that Lakshmi Natha is the originator of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. After him, Goddess Lakshmi herself is there. Then comes Vishvaksena, then comes Shatakopa Muni, and so on. This is how the Guru Parampara works in Vishishtadvaita. Now you might see that I am using words like Vishishtadvaita and Sri Vaishnava interchangeably. Ideally, I should not be doing such a thing because Sri Vaishnava is a specific sect which believes in Vishishtadvaita, whereas Vishishtadvaita is a philosophy that pertains to a specific kind of relationship between Jiva and Paramatma. This specific kind of relationship need not necessarily be followed by Sri Vaishnavas alone, but as the most prominent teachers of Vishishtadvaita have been from Shri Vaishnava school, we use the words interchangeably at times. Now, that being said, let us look at some ancient followers. Yajnavalkya Maharshi, as I mentioned, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we have a considerable explanation of Vishishtadvaita in the Upanishad. Hence, he is praised by us and prayed to by us. Emperor Prahlada, the son of Hiranyakashipu, he is mentioned in scriptures such as Ishvara Samhita to have been a follower of the Shri Vaishnava Sampradaya and a person who used an Urdhva Pundra, the way I'm having on my forehead. Prahlada had it on his forehead. So for us, it is a great bhagya that great Maharshis and great devotees have used what we are using. We may not be even 1% as great as them, but it gives us a sense of happiness that we are also following the same path that has been shown by the great people. As Krishna says in Gita, Yadyad acharati shrestha tatta devetaro naraha. Whatever is followed by the shrestha, a great person, that is what the common man would also follow. In that way, we should also feel happy. Kashyapa Maharshi, as I already said in Ramayana, we see it in Balakanda, the shloka that I mentioned. And then Bodhayana Maharshi. I have listed it in the order of the time periods when their works are available. So Kashyapa Maharshi, because he is saying it in Ramayana, but not during Rama Kala, but during Vamana Kala. So Vishwamitra tells Sri Rama that Kashyapa Maharshi performed a great tapasya towards Vishnu, and then he sang a prayer in praise of Vishnu. It is in this prayer that we see Vishishtadvaita. And this prayer was performed by him because he wanted Vishnu to be his son, which did happen as Vishnu came as Vamana. Then comes Bodhayana Maharshi, an extremely important person. This Bodhayana Maharshi is the person that we are going to cover about in greater detail today. Why? Because Bodhayana Maharshi's vritti, a particular text composed by him, is the basis for even the magnum opus of Bhagavad Ramanuja. Hence, we will look at Bodhayana Maharshi in greater detail today. Now, who was this Bodhayana Maharshi? If we look at Google, it might say that he lived at around the 8th century BC, or maybe 5th century BC, 1500 years ago, or something around 8th century BC. This is how the modern historians date Bodhayana Maharshi. But as per the traditional school, Mahabharata happened thousands of years ago. And in Mahabharata, Bodhayana Maharshi is mentioned. Bodhayana Maharshi lived during the same time as Vedavyasa. When did Vedavyasa live? Vyasa lived towards the end of Dwapara and the beginning of Kali Yuga. That is when, of course, Vyasa is still said to be there today. But we are talking about Vyasa as mentioned in Mahabharata, which was composed by Vyasa himself. So, during that time, Bodhayana Maharshi was also there. Certain important fundamental teachings in mathematics were known to us due to the teachings of Bodhayana Maharshi in the Vedic scriptures. Whatever we call as the Pythagorean theorem, where you have a right angled triangle and you say that the sum of the two sides, the adjacent side and the opposite side, if you square each of those sides and then add those squares, the sum that you would arrive at would be the square of the hypotenuse, the longest side of the right angled triangle. This is a theorem that is popularly attributed to a foreigner, but we see this theory mentioned in the Vedic scriptures way before him. So ideally, the credit is something that we should be giving to Bodhayana Maharshi, even when seen from a totally secular historical perspective. But due to the lack of popularity, such a thing has not happened. What are some other things that ancient Indians were able to learn through the teachings of Bodhayana Maharshi? The square root of 2 to a number of decimal places. That is something that Bodhayana Maharshi had taught. Then there is this problem of circling the square. What do you mean by circling the square? In mathematics, you draw a square, then you draw a circle. What should be, if I am giving a square by mentioning the length of one of its sides, then what would be the area of a circle that could be inscribed either exactly inside the square or outside the square in such a way that its edges touch the circle, and so on, we could say. So these kinds of problems have all been solved by ancient mathematicians with the help of the teaching of Bodhayana Maharshi, who literally taught how to do it. Of course, the reason why he taught all of these, now a question might arise. We are speaking about Bodhayana Maharshi, but this is supposed to be a class on Vishishtadvaita. Why are we discussing mathematics? There is a very important thing that is taught by this specific point, the second point here. Bodhayana Maharshi, when he taught all of these things, he did not just teach them as mathematics, the way you go to school, a teacher teaches mathematics, the class ends, you move on. That was not the purpose. The purpose behind teaching all of these was not to learn mathematics, but to learn and use mathematics as a tool to perform rituals that are part of worship of the Supreme Being. So the actual goal is worship of the Supreme Being. And it is for that purpose that even the Laukika field of mathematics is being used for. So this is one of the very important teachings of Shri Vaishnava philosophy or Vishishtadvaita philosophy. All the Vishishtadvaita philosophers stress on the point that we have to compulsorily try our level best to get out of the sense of doership. In a single word, we call it as karma phala tyaga. Karma phala tyaga means the surrendering or giving away of the phala, the results, the fruits of the karmas that we perform through thoughts, words, and actions. And how do we do it? We do it by surrendering all of them to Bhagavan. Naham karta, harireva karta. In that manner, I am not the real doer. Hari is the doer. Thinking in this manner, doing a karma phala tyaga. That is something that people would do when any and every action done by them is a form of worship. Or I could say that if a person starts believing that anything and everything that is happening is all happening only because of the Supreme Being, then that person automatically is a person who is worshipping the Supreme Being at all points of time. So this is the inner teaching that we need to understand. Then of course in Krishna Yajurveda, in the Taittiriya Shakha, the Bodhayana Sutras are taught. Even today, their greatness is known to people who have done Adhyayana. Apart from that, Bodhayana Maharshi had composed bhashyas. Bhashya means commentary. He had composed bhashyas on two types of Mimamsa Sutras. What two types? There is one type called Purva Mimamsa. There is one type called Uttara Mimamsa. Uttara Mimamsa is what is better known as Vedanta, whereas Purva Mimamsa is today better known as just Mimamsa. In reality, the word Mimamsa itself means analysis, and the Vedic teachings may be divided into two parts: Purva Mimamsa, which deals with the practical aspects of the Vedic teachings, and Uttara Mimamsa, that deals with the theoretical teachings. Of course, eventually they developed into two different schools altogether. So there is a separate Mimamsa school today and a separate Vedanta school today. But both of these being parts of Vedas, shouldn't it ideally be that there is consistency between the two? Bodhayana Maharshi composed Bhashya on the 16 chapters of Purva Mimamsa Sutras and 4 chapters of Uttara Mimamsa Sutras. Today, if you go to Purva Mimamsakas and ask, they would say that there are only 12 chapters of Mimamsa Sutras. The last 4 chapters have been lost. 13, 14, 15, 16, those chapters have been lost. The Mimamsa Sutra Bhashya of Bodhayana Maharshi has also been lost. We cannot find it today. In Uttara Mimamsa, there are 4 chapters, fortunately fully available with us. Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada has composed a commentary on them. Bhagavad Ramanuja has composed a commentary on them. Madhvacharya has composed a commentary on them. So all those sutras are available with us. But once again, the Uttara Mimamsa Sutra Bhashyas of Bodhayana Maharshi are not available with us today. Some centuries back, very recently, there was a person called Dayananda Saraswati who founded Arya Samaj. He searched the length and breadth of India to find this Bodhayana Vritti. Bodhayana Vritti is the name given to his Uttara Mimamsa Sutra Bhashya. That is the Vedanta Sutra Bhashya. He searched but could not find it. Similarly, a more popular person, Swami Vivekananda, he searched all over India for Bodhayana Vritti, but he was also unable to find it. The last authentic version of Bodhayana Vritti is supposed to have been lost during the time of Bhagavad Ramanuja himself. And it is Bhagavad Ramanuja who was among the last people to have access to this Sutra Bhashya. Apart from that, Bodhayana Maharshi had composed a commentary on Bhagavad Gita also, on all the 18 chapters of Gita. Unfortunately, this is also completely lost. Now imagine a person during the time of Vedavyasa himself is composing commentaries on whatever Vedavyasa is teaching people. And that such a person from that period of time, whose works could be definitely considered as extremely authoritative, unfortunately, over the course of millennia, we have lost most of the works. But that is how our Sanatana Dharma works. People learn, then people forget, then in some way or the other, Bhagavan comes and reminds people. We see the same thing happening in Bhagavad Gita, right? In the 4th chapter, Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa. He says it has been lost over a period of time. I had only taught this before, this secret before, but unfortunately, O Arjuna, it has been forgotten by people. But I am telling to you one more time. So in this manner, Krishna tells Arjuna, in the same way, the Divya Prabandha verses that were lost were revived during the time of Nathamuni. In the same way, Bodhayana Vritti, whose teachings were last available only during the time of Bhagavad Ramanuja, and even his own Purvacharyas had only composed summaries of it. They did not directly have access to it so easily. But Bhagavad Ramanuja managed to secure a copy of it in Kashmir, and by using it, he composed the Shri Bhashya, because of which we know not only certain specific statements of Bodhayana Maharshi, but also Bodhayana Maharshi's exact interpretation of Vedavyasa's teachings of Vedanta. Now, this is so important here. Most people do not give so much stress on Bodhayana Maharshi. They directly start with Bhagavad Ramanuja. But if we look at Bhagavad Ramanuja, he himself in his magnum opus, the Shri Bhashyam, says, Bhagavad Bodhayana Kritam Vistirnam Brahma Sutra Vrittim Purvacharyaha Sanchikshipuhu Tanmatanusarena Sutraksharani Vyakhyaasyante. He says that our vritti was composed by Bodhayana Maharshi to understand the Brahma Sutras of Vedavyasa. But this, which was taught in a shortened form by the Purvacharyas, by having this vritti as the basis, Tanmatanusarena, as per this school of Bodhayana Maharshi, Sutraksharani Vyakhyaasyante. Let us try to explain the entirety of the Vedanta Sutras letter by letter by using the teachings of Bodhayana Maharshi. Now that means that letter by letter in Vedanta, everything that was followed by Bhagavad Ramanuja was based on whatever Bodhayana Maharshi had taught before. So that is extremely important for us to understand. It is the greatness of Bodhayana Maharshi which has led to the continuity from the time of Vedavyasa. Of course, afterwards, we are going to see the names of saints just before the time of Bhagavad Ramanuja. I mentioned Natha Yamuna Madhyamam. So there is Natha Muni, there is Yamunacharya, there are some people before them, and there are some people after Yamunacharya before Bhagavad Ramanuja. We will look at all of them in the next class and also arrive at Bhagavad Ramanuja's life and teachings, from which we will move on to the greater teachings of Vishishtadvaita. Okay, now so far so good. But where is the Vishishtadvaita element here? We see the Vishishtadvaita element in the Mimamsa Sutra Bhashya of Bodhayana Maharshi. We also see it in his Gita Bhashya. Of course, we don't see it. His Gita Bhashya is lost. His vritti is also lost. But from these two, the core of Vishishtadvaita is visible. As it is visible here, it is from here that we move on. So now, we don't have the works of Bodhayana Maharshi with us. What then could we possibly do? People were thinking, even in those days, it was very difficult to access Bodhayana Vritti. During the days of Bhagavad Ramanuja, they believed that only a single copy exists, that too near Sharada Pitha, somewhere far away in Kashmir. From South India, Tamil Nadu, where Bhagavad Ramanuja was residing, he had to travel all the way there. But such a task was was undertaken because although the Purvacharyas had composed the exact same teachings in shortened forms, like for example, a short summary of Bhagavad Gita is presented by Yamunacharya, who was the guru of Bhagavad Ramanuja. But in an extensive format, a complete explanation was provided by Bodhayana Maharshi. So this was extremely important, and it is because of following Bodhayana Maharshi's vritti that Bhagavad Ramanuja's commentary on Bhagavad Gita is also praised more. Remember, Bodhayana Maharshi's Gita Bhashya wasn't available at that time. Only the Mimamsa Sutra Bhashyas were available. That too only the Uttara Mimamsa Sutra Bhashya. Okay, so much about Bodhayana Maharshi has been spoken. Let us finally speak about Vishishtadvaita. because if we don't speak about it, the purpose of the class will not go on. So I said that there is a relationship between the jiva, that is the individual atma, and the supreme atma. Now remember, I am saying individual atma. In Advaita Parampara, if you look at the Shankaracharyas, for example, you would see them using the word jiva very commonly. You would not see them using the word jivatma very commonly. But in Vishishtadvaita Parampara, we use jiva and jivatma interchangeably. Now, there is a specific reason why the Shankaras do not like to use the term jivatma very frequently, because they don't want the disciples to get confused. Because when they say atma, there is only one atma. Then they say jivatma, paramatma, oh no, there is two. The student might get confused. But in Vishishtadvaita philosophy, we have to start with two in order to establish the relationship between the two. What is the exact relationship between the two? I said that in the Upanishad it says Yasya Atma Shariram, of whom the Atma is Sharira. Here, the Vishishtadvaita interpretation is of whom, that is of that Paramatma. The Jivatma is Sharira. Okay, we have used the word Sharira, but what does the word Sharira mean? Or an even greater question, what does the word Atma mean? Because the word Atma, in very simple terms, if the Neo-Vedantis is asked, the Neo-Vedantis, the Neo-Advaitis are asked, the Neo-Advaitis are experts at English. They teach us in lucid English. They use words like consciousness, super consciousness, and so on. If you look at Sanskrit, the word Atma, at one place, instead of Atma, the word Brahma would be used. Not Brahma, but Brahma. Not the Pullinga Shabda, but the Napunsakalinga Shabda. Another place, you would see a slightly different word that is used. So in this manner, a number of Paryayavachi Shabdas, a number of synonyms are used in the literature. But for us to be able to understand what the literature is saying, it becomes necessary for us to start following the teachings of some expert there. How do I know what is the correct medicine to take if I have a disease? I go to a doctor, not to any random person on the road, but to a doctor, but to an established registered doctor, because that person is authentic. In the same way, for us to understand Vishishtadvaita, or even Advaita or Dvaita or Shuddhadvaita or Achintya Bheda or Dvaita or whatever, we need to follow those exact experts. This is a very important statement, because different people, different scholars use similar words in different meanings. So the word Atma is said, the definition of Atma as defined by Advaita alone is looked at, then understanding Vishishtadvaita might not be possible. But if we want to start afresh, okay, whatever I studied so far, that was Advaita. Now let us look at how Vishishtadvaita says it. We will be able to understand it in a better way. Why should we do this? Or rather, why do scholars use the same words in different meanings? One reason is their differences of opinion. Another reason is the way in which they interpret different places. There are, for example, in Vishnu Sahasranama Bhashya, the commentary on Vishnu Sahasranama, if you look at the Shri Vaishnava Bhashya and the Bhashya of Adi Shankaracharya, that is the Advaita Bhashya, they might be saying similar things many of the times. But here and there, for the specific names of Vishnu, Adi Shankaracharya would give one meaning. That meaning would be 100% acceptable to the Shri Vaishnavas. Yet they would point out some other meaning, because for them, when they are composing the commentary, they look at it from a different perspective. So the beauty of Sanatana Dharma lies in having a very broad mind. We have specific scriptures. Yes, we cannot create our own scriptures as we please. We are not as great as the saints who have given them to us. The great saints and sages of the past, the great Maharshis like Vedavyasa and so on, Vedavyasa, Valmiki and so on. We are not anywhere close to them. We have to follow what they said. But at the same time, if we know what they have said, and if we know what is called as interpretation science, that is how to interpret, there are limits of interpretation in Sanskrit, limits of interpretation in scriptures. So the Sanskrit part, the Vyakarana, that should be available to us. Then the interpretation part, the rules of interpretation, that should be known to us. Then we should also be able to understand what is a technical term, what is not a technical term, where to treat something as a metaphor, where not to treat. If we are giving such a particular interpretation to the scriptures, what is it backed by? Is it backed by our own imagination, or is it backed by an expert? So when we say that Sanatana Dharma is liberal in terms of interpretation, it does not mean that I can imagine whatever I want and then interpret the scripture. If such a freedom is allowed, some very nonsensical or evil meanings could also come out. But if you are following the correct path of being logical and being unbiased and are performing research and are taking into consideration the teachings of experts, then whatever comes out of your writings or your lectures would automatically carry a greater authenticity. Just like how in modern times, when they compose research papers, at the end of research papers, they say references, and then they give a large list of citations. Why? Because those are the experts that they have consulted, the works of experts that have been consulted when they compose their work. In the same way, we see experts being consulted by even our acharyas who are considered as experts by us. So Shankaracharya did not create a Veda by himself. The existing Vedas, he explained them and taught them. In the same way, Bhagavad Ramanuja did not create any Veda or Purana, but he taught what was already there and what was already coming in the Parampara. It should be understood here, like how the word Adi Guru is sometimes used to refer to Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada and is a little misleading because there were gurus before him. He also had guru. He also came from a Guru Parampara. Advaita philosophy was not founded by Adi Shankaracharya. On the other hand, on the contrary, it was revived by Adi Shankaracharya. In the same way, Vishishtadvaitha philosophy was revived by Bhagavad Ramanuja on the basis of the teachings of Bodhayana Maharshi. So it is about this Bodhayana Maharshi that I wanted to specifically speak about today, because so far, how much ever I could try to see, it was not easy to find Vishishtadvaitis speaking much about Bodhayana Maharshi. But if the greatness of a Maharshi mentioned in Mahabharata, a Maharshi who has contributed greatly to Vedic scriptures, is if that is ignored, then it would not be a very nice thing to do. No, it is like climbing a ladder and then forgetting that ladder itself and throwing it away. That should not be done. So let us pay our respects to Bodhayana Maharshi and conclude the first class, the first session on Vishishtadvaitha Vedanta. So if there is any question with regards to whatever had been discussed today, please let me know. I will be free to answer them.
Is there any questions from anyone?
Yeah, Guruji. I am Gopal Subrao speaking.
Namaste.
Hello.
Please
Namaste,
answer.
Guruji. Very knowledgeable speech from your side. And I am having one doubt. See, we are following Dvaita, Advaita, or Vishishtadvaita. What is the aim of our goal is to just attain the moksha or something else, is it not? Then we have to follow, not like that, or what? What
Absolutely.
is our
The goal is to attain moksha only.
moksha only?
That
Moksha only.
goal is what all the three philosophies teach us.
All the three philosophies going to only this one only, moksha only. What is moksha then? What is moksha? I wanted to see what is moksha. See, Paramatma, you are telling Paramatma is different, Jiva is different, Jivatma is different, everything is different, you are telling. Then what is moksha?
Your question is really nice, but in your question, I would like to add a point of clarification. We do not speak about absolute difference here. We say that there is a specific relationship between the two. When we say Vishishtadvaita, okay. First, let me answer it from the Vishishtadvaita side and then come to the general side. When we speak as per Vishishtadvaita, we say there is a specific relationship between the two that causes abheda. I said Vishishtadvaita, right? It is Advaita. The word Advaita is there in Vishishtadvaita. I'm saying there is only one entity. But that one entity, how are you going to define that entity? It would be Samasta Chidachit Vishishta Brahma. There, the relationship is going to say that he is Chidachit Vishishta Brahma. For which reason, the relationship between Jivatma and Paramatma has to be stressed upon. That is the way in which we look at it. Now in Advaita, they do not.
There is no difference between Jivatma and Paramatma.
That is in Paramartha. In Vyavahara, there is a difference. No, that difference that is there in Vyavahara, once you get the complete realization, that difference vanishes. That is what is taught, correct? So the relationship between Vyavahara and Paramartha, the Vyavaharika Dasha and the Paramarthika Dasha, there are two states of existence where one is the absolute reality and one is the general perception of reality, right? The Vyavahara is the general perception of reality. In this manner, Advaita philosophy is relating the two. Vishishtadvaita philosophy would relate Vyavahara and Paramartha in a slightly different way. That is where the difference is going to be. So Shankaracharya also says Bhaja Govindam. We also say Bhaja Govindam. We do not have a difference there. We have a difference in understanding. We look at it from a different direction. That is all.